Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because we're going to do something super fun today. We are breaking down the nuts and bolts of a brilliantly written comedic action scene. You might be wondering, how exactly do writers balance life or death stakes with just laugh-out-loud absurdity without totally losing the audience? Well, we're going to look at an excerpt from a script called Midwest Mayday to see exactly how it's done. Not unless crows are the size of a house and brightly colored. Now, delivered with completely dry, deadpan humor by an air traffic controller, this single line is literally a masterclass in the cold open hook. It just grabs you, pulls you right into the mysterious, supposedly empty skies over rural Nebraska, and makes you ask, okay, what in the world is actually out there?
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Setting the scene and building that foundation.
Before the absolute chaos kicks off, the writer gives us this perfectly mapped out central trio. First up, we've got Hank. He's a 60-something, totally grizzled crop duster pilot who is 100% in control. Then you've got his polar opposite, Chloe, a panicked 20-something bride drowning in Tool who is entirely out of her element. And acting as the bridge between them, that's Jim. He's this perpetually bored 40-something air traffic controller who we literally only ever hear over the radio. Their distinct voices, their ages, their energy levels, it's all perfectly established right from page 1 to maximize the friction.
The other crucial part of that foundation is the setting itself. The script explicitly grounds us in what we call the ordinary world. We're talking a roaring, bright yellow air tractor crop duster cruising at 3,000 feet over just an endless sea of green Nebraska corn. Hank has flown over these exact fields for 40 years. It's totally mundane, it's his daily routine. And by explicitly showing us this predictable world first, the incoming absurdity, it's going to hit us so much harder.
Moving right along to Section 2, the absurd inciting incident. It's time to introduce some chaos.
So Jim, our completely over-it air traffic controller, radios Hank to warn him about a bogey. Now, a bogey is an unidentified aircraft, right? It's a term you usually reserve for a super tense military thriller or some highly serious situation. When you hear bogey climbing at 3,000 feet, you're picturing fighter jets or spy planes. You are certainly not thinking of what Hank actually spots through the blur of his propeller.
And this brilliantly illustrates what we call the rule of contrast. Visual comedy thrives on taking extreme opposites and just smashing them together. On one hand, you have Hank's reality, this industrial, roaring, heavy-duty agricultural machine. On the other hand, the bogey, a drifting, massive, neon-pink hot air balloon completely stuffed with white wetting tool. Visually speaking, they have absolutely no business being in the same airspace. It is just a fantastic visual gag right off the bat.
Which, of course, leads directly to Hank's reaction. He's staring in complete disbelief as he flies this wide circle around it, gets on the radio, and just deadpans, looks like the pilot is a giant marshmallow. It perfectly highlights his dry Midwestern stoicism. He doesn't freak out. He just assesses this escalating absurdity, a literal bride buried in lace with absolute bewildered deadpan.
All right, Section 3, a comedic character clash. This is where the setup truly meets the punchline.
So, we've got our visual gag, but the real heart of this scene relies on the dialogue. It works by trapping these two polar opposite characters in an inescapable setting where they literally have to communicate. Hank rolls down his window, pulls out a battered red megaphone, which, by the way, is a hilarious visual all on its own, matches her sluggish pace, and just yells, "Lady, you're in controlled airspace." Notice how Hank is desperately trying to apply logical, highly procedural aviation rules to a completely illogical situation. He's lecturing a woman in a wedding dress hiding in a basket about controlled airspace. And when he finally asks her why she was hiding in a balloon in the first place, Chloe screams back, "My fiancé said he didn't like ranch dressing. It was a deal breaker." Okay, just let that sink in for a second. This incredibly mundane, ridiculously specific detail, a condiment preference, is the entire reason she is floating thousands of feet up in the air. It perfectly undercuts the life-or-death physical stakes of the scene with just pure, unadulterated comedy. Listen, if you are taking notes on storytelling, this concept right here is your core takeaway. Trap contrasting characters together and let their worldviews collide. You take the stoic professional and the chaotic amateur, put them in a literal bubble, or, well, a basket in a cockpit in this case, where they can't run away from each other, and you just let them talk. It is a guaranteed recipe for compelling, genuinely funny dialogue.
Which brings us to Section 4, raising the stakes. We've got to have a ticking clock.
So the crucial point is, comedy alone just isn't enough to make an action scene work. The laughs are definitely there, but to keep us hooked, you have to introduce real danger. Walk through this escalation with me. Step 1. We've got a controlled airspace violation, establishing that they really aren't supposed to be there. Step 2. Hank realizes the wind is pushing the balloon directly east toward a massive grid of high-voltage interstate tension lines. Step 3. Chloe screams over the wind that she has absolutely no idea how to fly a balloon. Just like that, the writer layers the danger. They've created a ticking clock that forces immediate, high-stakes action.
And of course, Jim, still sighing through the radio at air traffic control, tells Hank to intercept and assist. Hank's muttered response, "Intercept and assist a balloon." Right, with a crop duster. It flawlessly grounds the danger. Jim's totally procedural command forces Hank into that classic reluctant hero role, while Hank's bewildered reaction just reminds us all how hilariously ill-equipped a crop duster is for a mid-air rescue mission.
This brings us to a really pivotal character shift. Hank shakes his head at the youth of today, assesses the eastward wind pushing her toward those deadly power lines, and says, "All right, Isaac Newton, let's see if those aerodynamics classes paid off." He throttles up. In this one single line, Hank transitions from a passive, confused observer into an active problem solver. He accepts the sheer absurdity of it all and fully commits to the action.
Which leaves us with the ultimate cliffhanger. Will Hank's aerodynamics class actually pay off? How exactly does one use a roaring agricultural plane to stop a neon-pink wedding balloon from hitting high-voltage power lines? The writer has masterfully built this tension, mixed it up with unforgettable comedy, and left us desperately wanting to read the rest of the script. So the next time you're crafting a scene, ask yourself, are my characters clashing? Are my stakes rising? And most importantly, do I have a giant marshmallow in my sky? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.